Thank you. That we have a committee meeting which is going to focus on one item, the referral that we got. Honorable members would remember that in our previous meeting on the 29th, they would have raised the matter of the legal opinion, and that we will be receiving that before we get to deal with this item. I want to confirm that it was received, and I had asked accordingly that it be sent to all members so that members would have an opportunity to reflect on it. So in that score, that's the item that we'll be dealing with before us. Of course, without waste of time, as I say, I want maybe Tembinkosi to confirm so that if there's any member who may have not received, at least there's some means to ensure that those would have received. And I'm sure that Honorable Mackenzie can still hear us. I see when he's not with his red tie, he changes allegiances quickly. So I can see that. So Honorable Mackenzie, I was just trying to get your attention. So all I'm saying is that that's what we have, but I would want Tembinkosi to confirm that all members were sent, and if there is a problem, I think members can indicate so that we decide whether we go through it, or if members have received, really there would not be a reason to go on a line-by-line basis. Can you just confirm that, and then we'll then move to the next. You can't hear?
I do not have the documents.
That's so. Tembinkosi, can you just explain that?
Thank you, Chairperson. Yes, as you correctly put it, Chairperson,
I know you, Honorable Mackenzie.
The legal document, Chairperson, was shared.
Sorry, I thought it was a different document. Sorry to disturb him, because I have got it and I have read it. Sorry, I thought we were discussing something.
All right.
Yes,
all right. No, Honorable Van Dam wanted to register a presence. We noted you and welcomed you, Honorable Van Dam. So you can mute your mic, but I know that Honorable Mackenzie raised his hand after you've been clarified.
Yes.
So you've now lowered your hand, so it's covered also. Yes, so we can then proceed.
Yes. Chair, for the record, as members have confirmed, it was sent and received. And Chair, I'm also just wanting to inform this committee that we do also have legal services, the drafters of the opinion, in attendance in this meeting. Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay. No, that's helpful. That then helps us. Honorable members, just to remind ourselves that when we were to consider the referral, we then said we could not consider it until we have a legal opinion that's written. We have now received the opinion that seeks to assist us to make a decision as the committee and make a recommendation to Parliament. Most of the areas that we're concerned about are specifically responded to in terms of the legal opinion. The good thing though is that members are indicating they've received it well on time and have gone through the legal opinion. For that purpose, we would not really be going through the legal opinion except where members would want to be clarified first, probably taking advantage of the presence of the legal department in the meeting that puts the opinion together. Otherwise, from where I'm sitting, it was fairly straightforward what is being put before us, and it should help us to make a proper decision. However, in the way we run the committees, to be sure that as the chair, we take members along so that we move together. If I may just check if there are any clarities you would need on the opinion, otherwise we can then just go and consider what is referred to us and make recommendations on how we think we should address it, having been legally advised. May I then take hands, those who may want to be clarified on certain matters by the legal team. Honorable Mackenzie, your hand is up. May I just check if any other member would want to speak? Okay, Honorable Mackenzie, over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good evening, colleagues. I did read the legal opinion. I thought it was very well put together, and certainly there was nothing they missed out in terms of the background or the discussions. I would only urge that we look at the recommendations as the legal advisors drafted them, and we don't leave any of those out, because I think those were quite specific in terms of what we needed to do. So as long as we keep those 4 recommendations, I'd be quite happy to go along with that. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Mackenzie, may I just check if there's no objection that we proceed and look at how we factor in the recommendations, right? Maybe that's what I would want members to speak to at this point in time. But maybe to assist the meeting, it's always too important to remember the report that we put together. In the report that we put together, we had 8 names, which is not 9. I think the legal opinion does speak to that in terms of if we are recommending a particular number, we'll have to have a particular number. However, even in that 8, the committee took a decision to make a recommendation that was quite specific, that those names were in the order of priority, from 1 up until 8. So we'll have to, I think, visit that point. And therefore, if we were to make a recommendation to have a 6th vacancy to be filled, it means you would now have to look at 9 names instead of 8, because the 8 was informed by the 5 vacancies that were under consideration by the committee. So I just thought it's important that we remind ourselves of that, and that we have submitted our report, which was then 80-seat. So amongst the recommendations we'll have to look at is whether that recommendation amends the report that were forwarded, and therefore would be forwarding an amended report, or whether would the committee decide to ignore this part and then say, look, we are starting a different process altogether. So I just thought we should be reminded that in that process, that was the product, and we now need to recommend further. So I want us to really talk to recommendations and how we can take this matter forward. Honorable Mackenzie, your hand is up. Honorable Kubeka, I've noted your hand. I do not see any other hand now, right? Honorable Mackenzie, was it a mistake that you didn't lower the hand? Okay, so the hand is now lowered. And I want to suspect that cap is far from you. Honorable Kubeka, can you come in?
Thanks, Chair, and thank you very much, and also good evening to the members and also to the officials that are here. Also, let me welcome the legal side, as they are saying, the legal side is also here. And thanks also to Tembinkosi on the initiating, as we have asked as the committee, on the issue of saying we can be very much glad if we can get the issue of the assistance legally, in order that when we take decisions, we must be at least on the right path. Already, Chair, if you can recall, before we can finalize this process, as at least we have been noted by that issue of that the declaration of that candidate vacancy. Well, it was the issue of saying we want to do the correct things. But when we were doing these interviews, we were genuine, and also we have done our level best to work as a collective. And also when we were trying to recommend, it was a collective decision, as we are saying, these 8 names, we were decided as a collective and decided to say, in these names, we are electing them with this order of priority. But we know that we were having more than this 8 names. The issue, it was that we are going according to the Act, as we decided to elect 8 names. But already we were having those names. So I can say, I would suggest, Chair, persuading to the committee to say there is no need to start afresh. As is just as we are saying, we need to follow the correct procedure to say we know that if we need to have 6 names, that's the first point. To correct it in also to our records to say it's no longer 5 names, now we are electing 6 names, but on that 6 names, on the 8 names that we have already elected, we need just to add only 1 name. So we will recall when we were interviewing, we can also recall as the members who were there, I think maybe Honorable Van Dam can also assist me there. Let me be a little bit biased to say it was supposed to follow the name of a woman actually after number 8 also. So I will just recommend by the name of Medikeledi Mushi to be added in order that we must make that a criteria in a correct manner to have those 9 names. And then we are having from number 1 up to number 8, as we were saying, in that order of priority, being added by that number of number 9 being Miss Dikeledi Mushi. I'll just pause there, Chair. Thanks, Chair, very much.
Thank you, Honorable Kupeka. Honorable Van Dam, your hand is up. Okay.
Thanks, Chair. So I agree with the legal opinion. I think parliaments and committees need to be nimble, and if a report needs to be withdrawn in order to be improved and not necessarily changed, then that should be allowed. In terms of the names, we had given 5 people, and we're going to stick to that. I don't think we're going to deviate from that. But just to also bring to the attention of the committee that it's now 6 vacancies, and the rule has always been 1.5. So we need to push it to 10. And for that, I would like to suggest Mr. Afresh Patel. As I recall, he was both on our list and the ANC's list. So I would like to make him number 9 or 10 on the list. We do need to send 10 names because of that 1.5 rule we've always followed. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, I think I stand to be corrected. If you use the 1.5 rule on 6 names, it will take us to 9, not 10 necessarily. It takes us to 9. But as I say, we can be corrected on that if calculations are not correct. I'm just taking it from the 5 names we dealt with gave us 8. Counting the 1.5. So I'm just taking it from a point that the human will be 9. Okay, fine. But as I say, if we have to push it to 10, we can just be advised on that. But we just thought it's just one name to add, and that takes us to 9. That's a 6 and a 3. which would be on behalf of 6. So, but as I say, Honorable Van Dam will be advised if
Please
that
check
calculation
if
is
you have
correct.
the other side, the other half. It's
So it's fine.
we don't give the minister as many names as possible. And as I can recall, Mr. Patel was on 3 lists, less than candidate Mushi. So if we're going to be fair, Mr. Patel 3 lists, Mushi not so much, but if the name must be added, no problem. As long as if it's 10, then we're comfortable, Chair.
Okay. Now, all I'm asking is that we can be clarified. So if we can be able to take it to 10, I don't think there's an issue. But just the requirements of the Act, it would mean choosing from 9, not the whole of 10. So that's what I want clarified. But it would appear that maybe before we get to the name, because it would mean that there's still a lot of persuasion to do on the name, but maybe the principle matter of agreeing that firstly we have accepted the legal opinion, and we are also agreeing as the committee that we do not restart a process but complete the process that we have started, and we have got enough candidates to choose from in order to get the 6 that we have put. And thirdly, that the list is in the order of priority, because that's important, that the names will still have to be called again in that order of priority so that we know what this decision means. The other issue that relates also to the opinion is for us to be clearer on the matter of the term, that necessarily if we are putting this as 6, the term should probably be the same, so you would not be having one candidate to just complete the remainder of a term, right? So that is clearer, that we have agreed on those principles. Then we can discuss the name issue on whether it's 9 or 10. I think will be clarified there, but I was still saying it's 9. But as I say, with the name, it usually is in the committee. We can be able to persuade each other on what do we seek to address by a particular name and agree. I don't think it's a matter we can drag for long. Yes. But Honorable Van Dam, you wanted to still come back before I ask that we get a quick reply on whether our difference in calculation has any bearing on what we need to deal with. Honorable Van Dam.
Chair, before we move on to that, now there's one point that I am not fully comfortable with. Now, I don't mind the ones whose terms expired and then we are appointing afresh. They can start a new term. However, I am not, unless I didn't read the legal opinion correctly, the legal opinion doesn't say anything about someone who is filling a vacancy and not, someone who's taking over from someone who's resigned and not someone whose term is expired. So I would suggest that we get a legal opinion specifically about that. I don't think we should make that decision without being sure. Just from instinct, I don't think that should be okay. That the people whose terms have expired, yes, full term, but this one, I think they must complete the term of the person they're replacing. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, is that Honorable Lisiba?
Thank you, Honorable Makosonke. Chair, mine is not on the names necessarily. I think the whip presented it properly. If the next name is the lady, I don't see how Honorable Van Dam can differ with a lady. Rather, we can argue on how we include Ashraf in the 10. But I don't see how Honorable Van Dam can necessarily differ with the representation of women. But my question is this one. What are the implications if we agree to withdraw from the National Assembly process and make an addition, noting the fact that the term of office for ICASA as a board is ending by next week, Monday, I think. Are we still having the same item on the National Assembly agenda on Monday? In that case, I would agree with the proposer. But if the matter is still going to be rescheduled, the implication is that we will not have ICASA from Monday. And that's a serious matter. And it's got a bearing on us as a committee because we must have finalized the process at least by the time the term ends. So the issue of my Honorable Whip and Van Dam, I think can be resolved as you propose, Chair. They can include both of them because I don't think Honorable Van Dam is necessarily differing on Mushi. What she is differing on is on the addition of Ashraf, which can be handled separately. So that's my concern is only on the process, whether if we withdraw today and make a new submission with additions, what are the implications of the matter being set on the National Assembly's agenda as tabled now? Thanks, Chair.
Honorable Van Dam, I saw you're still raising your hand and would want to speak.
Thanks, Chair. Since we are withdrawing a few things, I withdraw my previous point about the term. And I agree with Honorable Mulala about adding both names, but can I not be blackmailed into supporting someone just because we share the same gender? So we Patel, that's our name. We believe it should be the 10th name. Patel was on all three parties' list. Mushi was only on the ANC's list. So I support Honorable Malala in saying both names must go in. Thanks, Chair.
At least you've withdrawn on the issue that relates to the term. So we don't need to respond to it because I was still going to refer you to the legal opinion whether it's been received. Honorable members, just the clarity about the 9 and the 10. Just clarify that point. I think we're at a point where we agree with the recommendations we're putting forward. We'll come back to the issue raised by Honorable Mulala, but I just want us to clear this point first. Whether it's 9 or 10. The calculations. I'm not saying we shouldn't have 10, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying the consideration that the minister should make would be on 9 names or 10. So if it's 10, it's fine. We don't need to fight over it. Probably it's the interpretation of what this 1.5 would mean in numbers. Tembinkosi, do you want to clarify that point as well as the issue raised by Honorable Mulala? We'll deal with it, I think, just after you've clarified the number.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're struggling with calculation. We just want to be sure that we supported the right thing. Okay. You want to clarify?
I just wanted to say something, but I don't know if it's complimentary. There was an honorable member for the EFF who can do mathematics for us. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. That member will probably join us next time. But all I'm saying is that it's neither here nor there. But we should just follow what the Act says. And if the Act gives us 9, it's 9. But if it's 10, we already have 10 names. Can I make it in that way? Unless you want to come in. I know 10 because it's difficult for you because you now have to remind us about the Act. But if you don't want to come in still, it's fine. We have 10 names, Mushi as 9, and Ashraf as 10. Right, guided by what comes out, then we'll submit the names in that order. Can you agree?
Yeah. Such a person will submit 10 names. Chair, the Act says the National Assembly must submit to the Minister a list of suitable candidates, at least one and a half times the number of councillors to be appointed. And in this instance, it's 9, but it says at least one and a half. I'm not sure if maybe legal services would want to come in and maybe advise whether the committee will be taking the right direction if it recommends 10 candidates, or whether it should stick to 9, Chairperson. And then, Chair, on the issue that's been raised by Mr. Mulala regarding the house sitting of
Honorable Tempinkosi.
Tuesday, the 9th, Honorable Mulala.
Honorable Tempinkosi.
No, Honorable Mulala, please mute your mic. You've been addressed now as Honorable Mulala.
Thank you, Chairperson. A debate for another day. Chairperson, so I was saying the Tuesday meeting, the Tuesday House sitting, Chairperson, it is, ICASA is scheduled for the Tuesday, and I doubt very much that if we adopt a report today which actually rescinds and replaces the one that is currently before the House with this one, there will be any problems with that, Chairperson. There were also the colleagues that sit in the NA table were also part of the consultation process, so they will be aware that the committee would be making a decision on the matter today. So, Chair, with all due respect, we do have Ms. Fatima Ibrahim and Advocate Frank Jenkins in the meeting from Legal Services, and maybe if they want to advise on the issue of the numbers, I would leave it in their capable hands. Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay, no, I think we take note of what you've raised. It's only if they really want to clarify us on that. But we're thinking that we are reaching common ground. We're putting names in the order of priority, and that will be like your 10 names. But if the Act so specifies that it's 9, they are already in the order of priority. We have agreed on the term issue. So they can just clarify on that point. I think you've also clarified the point that's already in the legal opinion with regard to whether we can amend or not amend a report. That area is also covered, in my view, quite clearly. So all we will need to do is to submit the report that we have adopted to the tabling team there, and they should be able to process it there as such. So it shouldn't really affect from where I'm sitting. But if Ms. Ibrahim would want to speak on the matter now, that's the opportunity we give. You can address the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, honourable members. Chair, the committee secretary correctly points out that the 1.5 is the minimum number. So there's nothing that prevents the committee from adding a 10th, even an 11th or 12th name, because that does provide a small discretion for the minister to choose the number out of a slightly bigger list. On my calculation, Chair, the 6 times 1.5 is 9. The reason that we got to 8 when it was 5 was because 5 times 1.5 gives you 7.5. And you can't have 7.5 names. We had to round up. So I think that's where the confusion may have come in. But certainly you are welcome to put 9 or 10 names. On the issue of the period of the vacancy for the person that's now resigned, Chair, the Act does make it clear that that person can be appointed for a full term. It doesn't have to be the term of the predecessor. And of course, the drafters took in consideration the importance of continuity, the cost and the effort that's involved if you're going to appoint somebody for just 2 or 3 months, only to have to go out on the process again. So that's something that the committee can consider. And then lastly, Chair, on the issue of the term coming to an end, that also notes that an extra 45 days, a maximum of 45 days additional time can be given on the 4-year period if the committee is still busy or if Parliament is still busy with its process. If we exceed that additional 45 days, then you will sit with a situation where you don't have a complete board. But as Chairman Corsi points out, there's no reason for that because it should serve before the NA in time. So that's all from my side, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ibrahim. I think we are clear, honourable members, in terms of our recommendations. There's consensus on the 10. And that's what we have in that order, right? So there's no confusion there. We've also agreed on the term because it's also about the stability you need in ICASA. But I think the other issue of consideration indeed was the costs when you've already had a due process that you followed and there was still enough candidates to choose from. So I think we are clearer on that. And I think that's the report we should be making to the National Assembly, that we have agreed on those, including the full term, and that will place it for consideration in the same NA sitting, because it was already part of items to be considered by the NA. So it's merely an amendment. It's not like a withdrawal of the report completely. So I'm amending to put the portion that talks to the 6th vacancy that would have occurred and that we are able to fill it. Do I have your consensus agreement, honourable members?
Chair, can I ask one question?
Honourable Faku.
Chairperson, I just want to go to the way forward on 23C, on the legal opinion. I'm just, this legal opinion is saying the amended report should contain a recommendation that the candidate recommended to replace Ms. Nomondeke be appointed for a full term. Can legal explain that point for us? 23C. Or if members are clear, maybe they can assist me so that I can understand it.
Yeah, I think this is the point raised by Honourable Van Dam earlier on, which she then withdrew from it, was that, of course, because this is a vacancy that's occurring in the course of the term, and that there's a remaining period for the term of the councillor that has resigned. And therefore, you could still appoint for a councillor that will come in and complete. However, we advise that we can also take the option of appointing for the full term. There's nothing prohibiting us from going that route. And as I say in this regard, Honourable Van Dam withdrew on the issue that related to the term. Because the recommendation we are putting forward is that the 6 members that we are putting up, which are in the recommendation we are putting, will have a full term as they come in. And that will not have complete the term, then re-advertise again in 2022, then fill in that vacancy again, right? So that's what it is, Honourable Faku. But Ms. Ibrahim may want to come in that scope. Is it advocate? Oh, advocate, sorry.
Chair, you're absolutely right as you explained it. It could be that a person that's appointed resigns or even passes on, or for whatever reason can no longer be part of the council after a month, in which case to say that they must just fill in the rest of the term would make sense, because the rest of the term would then be almost 4 years. In the opposite extreme, you could have somebody that's going to resign 2 or 3 months before the end of the term, which means you are then spending quite a bit of money, time, and effort to appoint somebody just for 3 months. So that is why the Act then gives you the election to allow for that additional full term, so that we don't need to go through these processes unnecessarily. Because as I said, besides the cost, there's also the issue of continuity. You don't want the council to be disrupted unnecessarily. So those are the sorts of things that you would take into consideration. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I clarified, Honorable Fako.
Yes, I'm clarified. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. So I take it then that there's no objection in the way we have resolved. But more importantly, as I said, it's important to have the names read again in the order of priority, right? Up to number 10. Because that's important because we're talking to number 6. Tembingusi, can you just remind the members, because that's part of the report in any way, the recommended 1 to 10 now, yes.
Thank you, Chair. If can I suggest, Chairperson, that as you have agreed on all the discussions that you are having, if I can perhaps then proceed to read the committee report, which will then include, of course, the names and even the recommendations of the committee, Chair.
Proceed.
Thank you, Chair. And honorable members, the report would be shared with members as soon as the committee adjourns. I would have loved to share it on the screen, but it will also disturb me as I'm reading, because sometimes sharing that a Word document here on the screen is not nice, then I will not flow properly. So if I can request that honorable members allow me to read through the report, and as I indicated, the report will be shared with the members immediately after the meeting. Chairperson, if I can begin, this is the report of the Portfolio Committee on Communications on the filling of 6 vacancies in the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa Council, dated 4 June 2020. The Portfolio Committee on Communications, having considered a request from the Minister of Communication and the acting Speaker of the National Assembly to fill 5 vacancies in the ICASA Council, reports as follows. A letter dated 6 August 2019 was received from the Minister of Communications informing the National Assembly of the existence of a vacancy on the ICASA Council as a result of the removal of Mr. Ruben Mutalucha as a councillor and chairperson of the council, and requesting the National Assembly to commence with the process of filling the vacancy in terms of Section 5 of the ICASA Act, Act number 13 of 2000. Another letter dated 7 August was received from the acting Speaker of the National Assembly informing the Minister of Communications and the committee that 4 vacancies would arise in April 2020 as a result of the end of term of the following councillors: Mr. Paris Mashile, Ms. Butlenyana Mukele, Mr. Peter Zimri, and Dr. Kiabeso Mudimuweng, and informing the Minister of Communications that the National Assembly would commence with the process of identifying candidates to fill the 4 vacancies in terms of the Section 5 of the ICASA Act. The committee considered the letters from the Minister of Communications and the acting Speaker of the National Assembly and resolved that the committee secretariat should proceed with the process of publishing an advertisement in the media calling for the nomination of persons to fill the 5 vacancies on the ICASA Council. The advertisement was published in all 11 official languages, in 2 national newspapers, 2 regional newspapers, and 7 community newspapers. 126 nominations were received. On 11 February, the committee met to consider the criteria and skills required to fill the 5 vacancies and unanimously resolved that the following 20 candidates be shortlisted for the interviews: Ms. Butlenyana Mukele, Ms. Peter Zimri, Dr. Kiabeso Mudimuweng, Mr. Edmund Baloyi, Ms. Yolisa Kedama, Mr. Ashraf Patel, Mr. Sipho Tsotetsi, Ms. Sandisiwe Ncemane, Ms. Zanamutla Khanyile, Mr. Junior Kumalo, Dr. Charles Lewis, Mr. Zolani Matthews, Ms. Dikeledi Mushi, Ms. Nombutuko Nondombana, Mr. Lebuhangu Palamo, Mr. Kenilworth Chu, Ms. Amanda Tsuba, Advocate Lutando Mkumatela, Mr. Posa Mashangwane, and Mr. Linden Petsa. As the committee was preparing for the interviews, a letter was received from Mr. Sipho Tsoteti to inform the committee of his withdrawal from the process. On 25, 26, and 27 February 2020, the committee interviewed 18 candidates, with an exception of Ms. Mokhele, who could not attend the interview due to ill health. She was later interviewed by means of a virtual meeting platform on 4 May 2020. On 11 May 2020, the committee deliberated on the interviews, taking into consideration the skills of current councillors, skills required for the incoming councillors, as well as issues of continuity in the leadership of ICASA, and unanimously recommended that the National Assembly approve the following 8 names, from which the acting minister should appoint 5 as ICASA council in order of priority. Dr. Kiabetso Mudimuweng, Ms. Yolisa Kedama, Ms. Zolani Khositsile Matthews, Mr. Peter Zimri, Advocate Lutando Mkumatela, Dr. Charles Lewis, Ms. Amanda Tsuba, and Ms. Sandisiwe Nxemane. During the process of the above-mentioned recommendation of the committee, another letter dated 12 May 2020 was received from the Acting Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, Mr. J.M. Tembo, Member of Parliament, informing the National Assembly of the resignation of Ms. Nomonde Kongeka Siyopa, a councillor of the ICASA Council, a councillor on the ICASA Council, with effect from 11 July 2020, and requesting the National Assembly to initiate a process of filling the vacancy in terms of the ICASA Act. On Friday, 29 May, the committee met to consider the referral of the Acting Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies on the vacancy in the ICASA Council, and resolved that the vacancy which has arisen as a result of the resignation of Ms. Kongeka Siyopa be filled together with the other 5 vacancies, subject to a legal opinion on the matter before proceeding. On Thursday, 4 June 2020, today, the committee met to consider the referral together with the legal opinion and resolved that 2 additional suitable candidates from the interviewed candidates be added to ensure that the amended report contained 10 names, being 1.5 times the number of vacancies. The National Assembly approved the following 10 names, from which the Acting Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies should appoint 6 persons as ICASA councillors in order of priority for a full 4-year term. Dr. Kiabezo Mudimuweng, Ms. Yolisa Kedama, Ms. Zolani Khosetsile Matthews, Mr. Peter Zimri, Advocate Lutando Mkumatela, Dr. Charles Lewis, Ms. Amanda Tsuba, Ms. Sandisiwe Nxemane, Ms. Dikeledi Mushi, and Mr. Ashraf Patel. Taking into consideration that Section 92B of the ICASA Act provides that a councillor is appointed to hold office for the rest of the period of the predecessor's term of office, if the minister, acting on the recommendation of the National Assembly, appoints such councillor for a longer period which may not exceed 4 years. And the previous report of the committee tabled on 13/2020, ATC number 52/2020, be rescinded and replaced with this amended report. That would be the report of the committee, Chairperson.
Honorable members, before I give over to yourselves, just maybe clarity on correction here, because we've been dealing with 2 boards. It's very easy to make that mistake. 126 will apply to MDDA, so still stick to 75 as it relates to ICASA. I'm saying in the reading there, you amended to 126 application. So I do know that it's because of the MDDA situation, so that it's at least on record that there's nothing that's new that has been brought in. Just also on the issue that relates to the effective date of resignation by the councillor. I think, unless memory is failing one year, is that July necessarily is the completion of your notice period, but the resignation would have been 11th, is it April, by the councillor, with the notice date ending by 11th of July. I'm saying your 3 months in that score. So if you can just consider that so that it's properly captured in the report, I think the recommendations seem to be fine from where I'm sitting. But as I say, honourable members, I'll then ask you to consider the report because it needs to be adopted as the report of the committee, which will still be shared with you after this meeting. May I then invite members to give an indication, as Temkosi says, for record, mover and seconder in that score.
My favorite part, Chairperson.
Yes. Can I invite members so that we move quicker? I know you are used members to having those long meetings we have, and I'm sure you're quite surprised that we can close on this one quicker, this item. But please help us to close on it. Honorable, is it?
Can I second Mackenzie?
Go back. Or is it Mackenzie? Is your hand up? Yes. Or is it Pumzile?
Rebecca Van Dam, Chairperson.
Pumzile, and I see the and Kubeka.
Honorable
Kubeka. Honorable Kubeka.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let me welcome and also appreciate and moving for the adoption of this report with all the changes that we have suggested and put it in the report. I move for the adoption of this report. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Kubeka. Honorable Van Dam.
Thanks, Chair. I'll give our input in the House, but I must appreciate the committee for, we've worked quite well together, but we were obviously disappointed with the quality of candidates. We would have preferred if there was a situation where there were lots and lots of quality candidates, and that's why we only gave the number that we did, but we will raise that in the House. So of the 10, we support 5, but we'll speak to it in the House.
Honorable.
Hi, man, Van Dam, why are you spoiling a good thing?
Hi, Bo.
That was a seconding.
Honorable Van Dam.
I know it will be seconded. I'm just saying that can our objections in that regard be noted, but it's not so substantive that we should derail the meeting. I'm just saying that the points about there not being the good enough candidates, there isn't necessarily an issue of this committee. It's just saying that, we didn't think the candidates that came forward were good enough.
Honorable Van Dam seconds.
I'm not seconding, please.
The recommendation, but raises concerns that they will raise in the House. It's unless Honorable Mackenzie wants to come in here, but I take it that is that second bit.
No, it's not a seconding, please join.
All right, Honorable Mlal.
Yeah, no, I want to second my whip there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all.
Okay. No, thanks, Honorable Mlala. It's seconded, and therefore the report is that of the committee.
So we pay the deputy whip.
So that's
can you behave, Fagu?
Honorable Fagu. Honorable Mlala is struggling there with his camera because we can't see him. I get your point.
Man must raise a hand, man. I don't see her.
Right. So, Honorable Van Dam, please mute your mic so that we can just yes. So, in that score, honorable members, we have reached that point for the committee side that we have a report, and indeed the names as have been processed is as agreed by the committee, unanimously so. But of course, we'll wait for those matters to be raised in the House, like any other item. It does happen. But I like the words of Honorable Van Dam that it has nothing to do with the committee and how it has worked, because collectively we did the best we could, given what we have. With that, honorable members, this takes us to the end of business for this evening as it relates to this committee, and then we'll take the subcommittee. I see Honorable Van Dam, your hand is up.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I see there's about 10 minutes remaining of the committee. I just wanted to raise an important matter. So Parliament has extended the term, which means that we will quite likely have more committee meetings. I would like to propose some ideas of what we should include in the program, and for that we take into consideration.
I thought you were speaking on this item. Can you agree that we have closed this one?
Oh, sorry, Chair. Sorry.
You are just taking advantage that the committee works together and you want to use the 10 minutes. So in that score. So I'm just saying I'm not suppressing you, but I don't want it to be confused like we did not finalize this part so that we don't get back to it. So that is done. But as I say, I'm not suppressing you. You wanted to raise an issue, we'll just direct on how that issue needs to be handled. Yeah, then you can speak. That's fine.
Oh, sorry, Chair. I was just saying for the agenda going forward, Honorable Malala is very frightening. Can you please turn his camera off?
Honorable Malala, they are saying you appear in a dark place. And you can't be seen. And there may be suspicion that you are invading the meeting.
This is a
so Honorable Malala is lost, so he can just mute his mic for now.
Okay. Thanks, Chair. I was just saying that if we can make some input, obviously the committee will meet and will consider the new program. I was just saying when the management of the committee meets, can these matters please be considered? And that is obviously we agreed on the SABC, and then they projected revenue loss, post office, as well as ICASA on spectrum allocation. I just wanted to bring that to the committee's attention and request that those please be considered for inclusion for the rest of this term.
Thank you, Honorable Van Dam, because we would have closed on the item that we had, but those are matters that the management committee is seized with, understanding the guidance that has been given by Parliament, that we need to focus in three main areas, which is the legislation, petitions that may have been referred to committees, as well as statutory appointments. And I think looking at the work we have done on statutory appointments as the committee, we just thought that it does give us space to bring those items that we decided on as the committee that we will still want to revisit them, like you've mentioned them. So the draft program you will also receive, just to be comfortable with that it's a matter that's receiving attention. Honorable Mackenzie, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, just to build on what Honourable Van Dam was saying on 2 points. Firstly, I must agree, Honourable Malala looks distinctly frightening. It's the flickering flames in the darkness that are doing something to his face. He's my friend. I've forgotten my point now. Chair, just in terms of programming going forward, when the draft program was circulated before, I did submit quite extensive and I thought quite well motivated calls for various people to appear before the committee and the subjects to discuss. And I didn't get any feedback on that or acknowledgement that it was received or that any of these were included in the program going forward. I would like to just urgently please request that when you consider the program going forward, you will consider ICASA and the issue of spectrum and the spectrum auction, and perhaps invite ICASA and then also it would help the committee to get some deeper insight into this and also know where the telcos are coming from. So I think invite people like Vodacom, MTN, Telkom, Rain and Liquid. So those five, the five big guys, just to give us some more understanding on, and ICASA, of course, more understanding on the issue of spectrum and the spectrum auction. Thank you, Chairperson. As a matter of urgency and in this term. Thank you, Chairperson. Much appreciated.
No, as I said, Honourable Mackenzie, these matters we are looking at from the point of the management committee. You would also remember that we have also been trying to get even the organized formations in the form of forums, but our program was indeed disrupted by this COVID-19 as it came. Everybody had to reschedule and replenish everything else. So it's still our intention, and in fact it does strengthen the public participation in that way, that we can have different views on the table, but also understand how the sector looks at these decisions we continue to make. So it's there, but we'll of course look at the practicalities because we don't have same space. Because again, when you pile all of them in one day, you know what happens. But we'll really want to spend time qualitatively with those that come before us, so that we are not surprised by things that come into the public domain as though we have not foreseen that there may be challenges that exist somewhere there. So you are noted, your contributions are taken into consideration. Would look at them in the management committee. But as I say, we'll also circulate what would have put together as a draft program. But of course, given parliamentary processes, we had to apply for slots in the meantime with a program called the draft. So we just have to review and make sure that we can still get slots in this term as far as it's possible to cover the ground. With that, thanks, honourable members. Once again, you have an evening for those of you who are not in the 5 minutes brief that follows. Thanks for making time. Van Dam, Honourable Van Dam, are you here? You are not going to raise the matter now as we close, because no, I just saw you disappearing.
You must continue. I'm joking, Chair.
I'm interested in the do.
I saw you disappearing, so I thought Mulala has terrified you to a point of justice.
Van Dam is keeping him good.
All right, honourable members, thank you.
Look after.
Bye-bye, everyone. Good night.
Subcommittee members, right?
Bye-bye, Mackenzie.
Bye, Mulala.
Bye-bye, Mackenzie.
Bye-bye, Mulala.
Van Dam must get their dupe back.
What happens?
Okay. Bye, Mulala.
Between the three of us, run the country.
Honourable Mackenzie. Honourable Mackenzie.
Yes, sir.
When you log on before the meeting began, I tried to see. I thought you were part of the picture of the background. I was looking until you moved. You blinked. Then I thought, oh no, it's him. I thought maybe you created something that would also put you there in the picture.
I can get my wife to do that, actually.
Yeah,
She's a designer. She's very good with Photoshop.
honorable members, especially the ones for the subcommittee, was that we are almost done. I see Honorable Kubega, I think, has gone out, but Honorable Kumbu is still here. Yes, I see Honorable Kubega has lost the connection. But just to indicate that, as you are aware, we finished very late last week in terms of the MDDA members, board members. We will then have to indeed look at the recommendations. But for purposes of today, it may not be a possibility now. We are trying to get another slot for one simple reason, Honorable Mackenzie. I'm raising this in particular with you because you were not part of the ICASA process.
Yes.
How we have approached it was that we allow, yes.
Sorry, Chairperson. Sorry to interrupt you, Chairperson. I say that the people that produce our meetings are still here with us, and I just, when you adjourn the meeting, there were those talks. Maybe it was not clear for them
Yes.
that the committee, you had adjourned your meeting. This is just a discussion of members remaining in the meeting room, like we often do in the committee room. Discussing other matters. Just wanted them to be aware. Thank you very much.
No, thanks, Tim, because we did say that we even said good night to most of the people, except that you leave the subcommittee members. But as I say, Honorable Kubeka lost the connection. But I was just explaining that we are not having such a discussion because we are allowing the discussion that needs to happen. You've clarified, I think, I'm sure they've heard what you are saying. It's public information. Is that we try as far as we can to have a discussion that allows proper engagement so that we are able to give South Africans the best that we can.
Yes.
In a way that seeks to establish sufficient consensus and so on, right? So, which then also allows yourselves to interact. That's part of the broader consultation process, right? But as you know, South Africans have also been following the interviews. They do know that, like the committee reflected the other time, that we have also seen quite exceptionally good candidates that appeared before the committee. So once we get that slot, we'll be able to give a notice well in advance so that we can complete the discussion. That's where we are. Okay.
Thank you.
So, honorable members, so we'll then convene the one of the subcommittee once that slot is secured, and that in the meantime we allow those consultations to continue. Okay. Otherwise, thanks, Honorable Mackenzie. I've seen that you've not been able to get your cup throughout this one, so I'm on us in the class. So okay, it will give you time to get there. Thanks, Honorable Faku, Honorable Kumbu, for the understanding, and all our guests and support staff. So we'll reconvene once we get the slot. Good night. That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, colleagues. Good night.
Bye.
Night, members.
It's a good night, Tim Gosi.
Night, members.